Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We are in the 7th month now of the active coronavirus season in India. Remember, the first lockdown was in March. Now, at this point, it does not look like India is either flattening a curve or bending a curve. So, lots of questions arise about comparisons. So, one question that is always raised is, how did China contain it so quickly and so well? Did the Chinese do something? Do they know a secret formula or recipe or a drug or a vaccine? Or they are lying about their numbers? Forget the Chinese for a moment. How come the Pakistanis have done so much better? It does look like they've done so much better. And WHO also said, WHO has listed Pakistan among the countries which it says have handled this well. Again, if you look at Bangladesh next door to India, it looks like Bangladesh has also handled it well in terms of the total number of cases per capita, per million, and also deaths. And then there are other countries in the world. There is America. We know what's happening in America, Brazil, Chile, Britain. There is also a tiny country called Taiwan. So we are looking at the data from all these, some data from all these, from China, Pakistan, in a little bit more detail, to make some comparisons and also to give a little bit of a reality check to everything. Now, first of all, in Parliament, our Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan from Delhi, he made an interesting point and a brave point. He said, look, this is also spreading because people are irresponsible. Now, I know it is hazardous these days to say that you agree with somebody in the government or that you agree with a minister, least of all with the health minister. But the fact is, just step out of your city. If you are living in a big city, just step out 5 miles outside and you find nobody uses a mask. People hang out together. You see Punjab, Haryana villages, people go to eat chaat, the same plates are washed. Nobody cares. So we Indians are in a little bit of what in the north, we say dekhi jayegi mode. We'll see what happens. And I'm sure other parts of the country have their own same philosophical, fatalistic view. Nobody dies. And agar likhi hui hai to mari jayenge, like they say in the armed forces, that the bullet which has to come for you has your name written on it, so why be afraid? So we are not all soldiers, so we can't have that attitude. But the fact is that if you look around yourself, you will find that far too many people are now not taking coronavirus seriously. But you can always say, if that is the situation in India, look at the visuals from Pakistan. It's much, much, much worse. We have religious spectacles in India. In fact, you will see a story from my colleagues Anisha Bedi and Praveen Jain in Amritsar from the Golden Temple, who tell you that in the Golden Temple, a temple which has never been closed during COVID, it's also my favorite shrine to go to. Nobody bothers about social distancing or masks. And in fact, the General Secretary of the Chief Khalsa Diwan, who used to lead the Gurbani, passed away just yesterday. So we are in that mode. But if you look at Pakistan, for example, from where you get visuals, even the anti-Shia protests in Pakistan have tens of thousands of people milling together. There is no control, nothing. In fact, all the visuals coming out tell you that they also have the same dekhi jayegi mindset. So how come the numbers look much lower? What have the Pakistanis done to bend the graph? Or have they actually bent the graph? So we look at some of these facts. You will also define something in the very beginning, something called a sero survey. What is a sero survey? It's a serological survey. So what happens is, when you test people, like I got tested twice, RT-PCR, that is when I had fever and it turned out to be dengue. That is to check the exact number of people who've been infected. But you can't test everybody in your country. So what happens is that in epidemiology, in virology, in disease control, there is a science called serology. So or sero survey. What happens is you go to a place at random. It has to be random, otherwise it becomes selective. At random, you pick up a bunch of people and give them quick antibody tests to see whether they have antibodies or not. If they have the antibodies, that means they've been infected with coronavirus in this case in the past few months. That then you extrapolate. It's very much like a sample survey or very much like an opinion poll that TV channels and psephologists do. Samples are a few thousand, but you do it in such a way that it's genuinely random and there's a science to it. So you can arrive at an estimate of how many people do you think got infected. If you see, ICMR now says that their first sero survey in March and April itself showed that India had missed about 64 lakh cases. Now, one way is to say of saying it is that India had missed 64 lakh cases and only detected this many. The other is that, look, people are getting infected in an asymptomatic manner and you've only been testing the symptomatic ones. So I need to make that clear. Now we have some specific cases. The case of China. So I read this long article in the New Yorker by a New Yorker staff writer called Peter Hessler, who also teaches English writing in the University of Sichuan. And he gives his experience of what happened when the outbreak took place and people had to leave, and how within 3 months, he said on the 14th week of the outbreak, he's back, students are back on the campus. 11th week of the outbreak, he was taking a flight in China. The flight was full, no alternate seat, empty, schools had been functioning now for some time, etc., etc. So how did China manage it? Because, globally, I know Donald Trump says that tens of thousands died. And it's possible that in the early stages, tens of thousands of people might have died in China. Who knows? It is much less difficult to control data in China than in most other countries. Nevertheless, today it looks like things are quite normal. And in fact, Peter Hessler also mentions that in the province, in the city of Chengdu, in fact, he tells you, with the population of 16 million people, that is 1 crore 60 lakh people, they've had only 71 cases from February till the end of August, maybe another couple after that, if at all. Now, how did China manage it? So when you read this article, a long article, and I'm sharing it with you, then you realize that in the case of China, they can use methods which are not available to any democracy, because China is China. So what have they done? First of all, they have neighborhood committees, which are actually units of the Communist Party of China. Now, Chinese Communist Party has this neighborhood committees which are very powerful and which are also given funds to hire people for tracing, etc., etc. They are very powerful. They find out somebody has a sickness in the family. They will ensure the person is tested. If the person is positive, they'll seal the house. They'll lock the doors of the house. If a kid has fallen sick, they'll take the kid away from parents and put the kid in quarantine. And these are things that can't be done in democracies. In fact, Peter Hessler quotes a case of a Pakistani child who landed with his parents in Chengdu, had a 1-year-old child, had symptoms, was tested positive, was immediately taken away from his parents and was kept under medical observation in isolation for a full month. You can't imagine a 1-year-old being taken away in India, Pakistan, forget America, forget Europe. So these are things that the Chinese can do. Also, these neighborhood committees, they are all powerful. They are unlike, and plus they are not idiots, unlike our resident welfare associations, who are actually idiots in all caps, all capital letters. You know why I'd say so? Because as I talk to you, in my colony, barring 1 or 2, all other gates have been locked with big, huge padlocks, as if the virus will come through those lanes, through the gates. So instead of doing something about the virus, they basically flaunt their power by locking up your gates. In fact, our colonies in Delhi, I don't know how it is in other cities, I'm sure it's a bit of the same thing. Our colonies in Delhi have so many of their gates locked that it's a nightmare for Google, Siri, Alexa, anybody. But in China, these are genuinely empowered committees, part of the units of the party, and they became the sort of the strong arm of the party and the government to ensure this. Then they made mask wearing mandatory indoors as well as in public transport. And because they made it mandatory and they were confident that they'll keep it mandatory, if anybody's mask slips, there will be a punishment. They also did not need to bother so much about crowding. So the public transport, etc., opened much faster. And then they set up systems. They opened schools very early, but in their schools, they would have announcements at periodic intervals announcing temperature checking in all of the school, temperature checking and hand washing. And then Peter Hessler tells you that they made WeChat groups. And WeChat groups, it's quite something. I don't think we can ever have that in India. WeChat groups for children and their parents in a process called Geelong. Geelong, J-I-E-L-O-N-G. Geelong, translated into English, means connect with the dragon. What it means is that every parent and school, etc., are always sharing the data on the child. Is the child healthy or not? Temperature. In fact, Peter Hessler says in 1 month he got 1,146 WeChat messages on third grade students' temperature and health parameters. That's because his daughter was studying in third grade in that school. Now, that kind of regimentation is not possible in a democracy. Then tracers were divided in groups of 5 to 7. Each one was headed by a public health person. They were also empowered. They could go from place to place, ask questions, lock up people, take away those who seemed sick and quarantine them. In fact, he mentions that even by August, 53 of these contact tracers had died in China because they were doing their jobs so zealously. And then you have other sidelights. For example, they spread awareness to such a level. Now I know, and I sympathize with our minister saying that people don't care, because I think we have that fatalism, or we have that upar wala hai, Bhagwan bachayega. All of us take our gods too seriously. But gods, as I keep telling you, are not underemployed. Gods don't have the time to help those who are irresponsible. In this case, China is, you can still call it a godless society, but what they've done is, they have done a very good job of public information, public awareness. So social action has been very good. So there's a case quoted, for example, about a man in Beijing. When Beijing had its recent repeat outbreak, man in Beijing figuring out that he probably has coronavirus from symptoms, then getting onto his bike and driving to the hospital. Why? Because word has been spread that if you are sick and if you could be likely infected, don't use public transport to go to a hospital because you might infect others. So people are going on bicycles to hospital to say, looks like I have symptoms, do something about me. Those are things which are not possible in democracies. Plus, those are also not things possible in countries that are unlike China. Because in China, until 1976, the Cultural Revolution was on. It was a very controlled society. They were able to enforce the one-child rule. So things you can do in China are not possible to do elsewhere. For China, for example, Peter Hessler says, he's teaching, he says in China, a student always respects a teacher even if he is a moron. See, careful. Student is a she, teacher is a he in this case, because he's a moron. So that's a very compliant society. Unlike us, in our country, you give us a rule, we'll find a way of breaking it. And we say that's democracy. So is democracy then bad for a situation like a pandemic when you have to control it? Once again, I'll give you a contrary example. An example is from Fareed Zakaria, and I'm sharing his little monologue with you on his show on CNN GPS, where he mentions the country that's been the most successful, stunningly successful in the world in dealing with coronavirus is not a dictatorship. It's a pakka democracy. Which one is that? That is Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is next door to China. Taiwan has a population of 2.4 crores. Do you know how many people Taiwan has had dead from COVID? 7. That's all. Do you know how many people travel between mainland China and Taiwan in a year? It's 3 million, 30 lakh people. So how did Taiwan succeeded in doing this? So Fareed Zakaria says that they did it because they had the lessons of the earlier SARS, 2003 SARS, which they had handled badly, which also had come out of China, which also China had handled badly. But because of that, they had set up their mechanism. So they reacted very early. Taiwan, in fact, my young colleague Taran Deol, who's helped me with research with this, tells me that they actually got their system activated on 2nd of January. Remember, that's almost 2 weeks before China has told the world that this is a novel coronavirus. So 2nd January itself, the Taiwanese became active and they began working on it. So they have only 7 dead. And Fareed makes this telling comparison that Taiwan has 7 dead in a population of 2.4 crores. New York City, in a population much less than that, has 32,000 dead. So it's not as if only a dictatorship can handle these things well. Even a democracy can handle these things well. And plus, he then has a hypothesis that many of the Asian countries that have handled it well, for example, China, Vietnam, Thailand, and you can also add New Zealand there, it's an Australasian country. These were countries which faced SARS in 2003, and they had kept that institutional memory. And the second point he makes is that, and in fact it quotes from an article from somebody else, that countries or nationalities that suffer from hubris, कि हमारा कुछ नहीं हो सकता, हम special हैं, कौन हमारा कुछ करेगा, or maybe my God is special, they are the ones who suffered most of all. So that is US, Brazil, Chile, United Kingdom, and I would add there in some ways India as well, because we have very high numbers. It's a good thing our fatality rate is low and it's going lower, but we have very high numbers. And if we were more responsible, if we were even halfway more responsible, we would have done much better than we have done so far. Now I know you want to know the comparisons, especially with Pakistan. Now if you look at the data for Pakistan, Pakistan shows you about 32 lakhs tests done so far, 32 lakh, of which about 3 lakh, a little over 3 lakh positive cases have been diagnosed, and deaths are 6,420 at this point. This is not counted to the last decimal point or until this hour. Now, if you compare India with that, India is six and a half times of Pakistan's population. Pakistan is 6,400 dead. India now has almost 88,000 dead. So does India have such a high fatality, so many more people are dying here than in Pakistan? Pakistan has 3 lakh positive cases. India now has 55 lakh positive cases. So once again, if you apply the multiple of 6.5, it would look like India has almost 3 times as many cases as a percentage of population as Pakistan does have. So what is it that the Pakistanis are doing that works so much better? Now look at the data under the data, and I always keep telling you, look at percentages, look at absolutes, compare absolutes with absolutes, percentages with percentages. Now if you look at the absolute data, the total tests performed in Pakistan as yet is just 32 lakhs, in fact 31 lakh 94,370. Total tests performed in India at this point are about almost getting close to 7 crores now, about 6.8 crores. So India has already tested almost 23 times. So the number of tests conducted in India is again will be a 4x, multiple of 4 over Pakistan's if you go by per million population. So the more you test, the more positive cases you will find. The second thing is, and again an important thing, that in India tests have gone higher and higher and higher and higher from day one. And now they gone to a very high level. In Pakistan, they were going high for some time and then they dropped like this. So there's a tweet from Shamika Ravi who's a well-known think tanker, whose graphics on COVID are very popular these days, he says that, look, what happened suddenly? Pakistan was for some time following a pattern where their test positivity rate was about the same as India's, or in fact higher. Suddenly their tests dropped and their test positivity rate also dropped. So Shamikar Ravi raised this question. Then the penny dropped. And penny dropped because Pakistan's some sero survey results have come out. And that's the reason I was telling you about serological surveys. Now this serological survey result has come out of Karachi, Pakistan's biggest city, population of 1 crore 60 lakhs. So if you look at this research report, survey published in Journal of Public Health, published by Oxford University. It's a reputed journal and it has 9 authors. You will see a screenshot on your screen, and I will also share the survey with you, the whole paper with you. It tells you that in the city of Karachi, 36% population is now showing positivity. Now if Karachi is 1 crore 60 lakh people and 36 to 37% people are positive, that means they've been infected. That means 6 million people have been infected in Karachi itself. Now, if you see that and then again interpolate and extrapolate and do your other exercises, you know that 92 to 95% of cases are asymptomatic. Again, you know that in Asia, fatality rates are low. And Asia means India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia. In all our countries, fatality rates are very low. It can be for whatever reason. We talked about Beta Stadler's theory earlier of hidden immunity. We've also talked about other theories, but the fact is that nobody now denies that Asian fatality rates from COVID, particularly South Asian, are much lower than the rest of the world. So if you see all that, then just as India missed out 60 lakh cases, 64 lakh cases in the first few weeks, it's possible that these cases are being missed out because nobody is bothering to test. So this is also one approach, which is don't test, don't count, and let the virus wash through your population. Now this is also not a purely unscientific thing, although I disagree with it. But there are epidemiologists in India, notably a very eminent epidemiologist, Joseph Muliel, who has been saying it from the very beginning, that if we are a young society, let young people go out to work, nothing will happen to them. Something will happen to them, nothing will, or to some of them. And he said, I think he said or someone else said that at the most, if all these young people of India, which is 90% of India, go out to work, maybe a lakh of them will die. Now, when epidemiologists talk like this, they are talking their science of numbers. So people like us, it's sobering. So this is also a science that you can't stop this. This is a flood. So close your nose as you do when a flood comes, when a wave comes at you, and duck and let the flood pass over you. Most people will survive. A few will not. A few will get a little bit drowned, so you can look after them. So that is what's maybe happening in Pakistan and to some extent in Bangladesh as well. Because Bangladesh might have done a little better than Pakistan in terms of detecting cases, but the tests they are also not conducting at those levels, because those are countries which are 1/6, 1/7 India's size. So if India has conducted about 7 crore tests, you would have expected them to have conducted about 1 crore of tests each. That has not happened. So you have to look at all these data and also then look at India's serological data that's coming from various cities. Delhi's last serological data for August first week showed that 29% of Delhi was positive. That means 1 in 3 Delhiwalas had already been infected. That's again almost 60 lakh people. That is if you trust sero surveys, and remember sero survey is a science. You can't just dismiss it, it's not astrology. Second, if you look at Pune, Pune now shows the last sero survey that 60% have been infected. Now, if 60% have been infected, how far is herd immunity? Bombay, the last sero survey, which was more than a month back, showed that in Bombay's slum areas, 57% were infected. In other areas, only 16% were infected, because the more narrow your living spaces, the more easily you get infected. That's why Karachi also, industrial workers have a zero positivity rate of 50%. So this is all the data to look at, which will then bring us to the idea of what is herd immunity. Now, there are many theories on that. There are doctors, for example, famous Pakistani origin doctor, Dr. Fahim Yunus, who millions of people follow around the world, but particularly in the subcontinent. He's the head of infectious diseases at University of Maryland Medical College in Washington. And in fact, this Friday, please watch out for it at 7 p.m. I will be telecasting my off-the-cuff conversation with Dr. Fahim Yunus. So he has tweeted yesterday saying that this shows that his country, that is Pakistan, is moving towards herd immunity. Now, no country can move towards herd immunity without having a large number of cases. It is just that some countries test at a very high level and identify a lot of cases. Some countries don't, and they leave it to God, and they leave it to the virus, and they leave it to a sense of, you can call it fatalism, you can call it irrationality, you can call it hubris, or you can just call it realism.